Reverse Flash is one of the biggest villains we've ever had in the superhero world. And across 8 seasons of The Flash, we've seen him younger, older. 2 versions existing at the same time, going into the future, coming back to the past. You name it. Reverse Flash's timeline is an absolute mess. I remember back in season 5, I made a video on this channel trying to organize his entire timeline. But since then, a lot has happened. New events with Reverse Flash have been revealed throughout the Arrowverse. So what are we doing today? In this video, I've put together his entire timeline based on everything that happened. And I also want to break down with you guys what really happened with the character over the years inside this universe. His origin, his peak, when he was at his absolute best. Then his downfall, the point where, in my opinion, the show completely ruined Reverse Flash. And of course, the reasons why that happened. Today is going to be a full recap of Reverse Flash's entire life in the Arrowverse. So without wasting any more time, let's get into it. Hey, what's up, hero fans? It's channel name here. And let's be real, without Reverse Flash, the Flash TV show would not have been the success it was. Every single season, they found a way to sneak him back in there. But honestly, that's also one of the big problems with Reverse Flash in the series. They used him so much that after a while, they had no idea what to do with him anymore. It got to the point where it was like, oh, just throw Reverse Flash in there, it'll be fine. And because of that, the writing for him got sloppy. They stopped giving the character the care he deserved. But anyway, let's cut the intro, talk, and get straight into the actual content. Reverse Flash's life events in chronological order. Something fans had theorized for years, but that finally got explained in season 8, specifically in episode 5. That episode, during Armageddon, revealed how this Arrowverse Reverse Flash actually became Barry's #1 nemesis. In the comics, we kind of had an idea, we theorized about it, but the show never really made it clear. In that episode, during a conversation with Barry, Thawne explains that 200 years in the future, he became a speedster. He figured out a way to tap into super speed, most likely because he was such a huge fan of the Flash. He even says in earlier seasons that he idolized Barry, he looked up to the Flash, and the moment he decided to become Reverse Flash was when he was about to save a crowd of people, his big heroic moment, and then Barry swooped in and stole the spotlight. Thawne says, "You humiliated me. You stole my moment. I thought I was faster than you. I worshipped you, and then you ruined everything." Of course, maybe Barry already knew exactly who Thawne was, knew his whole future story, and that's why he showed up and ruined his big debut. Either way, from that point forward, Thawne developed this insane hatred for Barry, the same man who inspired him to become a speedster in the first place. And that's when he decided to become Reverse Flash. The next big event we see in the series tied to this backstory happens in season 2, episode 10. That's when a younger version of Eobard Thawne travels back to 2015 to try and figure out who the Flash really is. After turning against Barry, he still didn't know his identity yet. He goes to investigate, and during that trip, he actually has a fight with Flash without realizing it's Barry Allen. Barry even tries to trap him there to stop him from going back to the future and causing chaos. But Cisco was already suffering from the timeline shifting since his powers were connected to the multiverse, so Barry had no choice but to send Thawne back to stabilize things. But that trip gave Thawne a lot of valuable information. He learned about STR Labs, about Team Flash, about Harrison Wells. He didn't get Barry's true identity yet, but he got the blueprint he later used to steal Wells' identity. Eventually though, Thawne does figure it out. He learns Flash's secret, finds out his real name, Barry Allen. And once he learns this, he decides to go back in time and kill Barry as a child to erase the Flash from existence altogether. That's when the future version of Barry follows him back. They fight. Thawne fails to kill young Barry, so instead he murders Nora Allen, Barry's mother, scarring him for life. That's the tragedy that pushes Barry to eventually become the Flash. But here's the twist. When Thawne came back to that moment in time, he lost his connection to the Speed Force. He couldn't go home. That's when Eobard comes up with the idea of stealing Harrison Wells' identity, an important scientist from that time period. Wells was about to build a particle accelerator that would eventually create the Flash. Thawne kills Wells, and his wife, Tess, and takes on Wells' face in life. From that point on, he spends years pretending to be him. He builds the accelerator even faster than Wells would have originally, all because he was desperate to get his speed back. Once the particle accelerator explodes, it finally gives him back his connection to the Speed Force. At the same time, it creates a bunch of meta-humans in Central City, and it creates the Flash himself. Thawne then uses that to his advantage, secretly training Barry, manipulating him, and making sure he becomes faster and faster. All so that eventually Barry would be fast enough to send Thawne back home to his own time. And that's exactly what happens in the season 1 finale. Barry has the chance to go back and save his mom, to change everything, but he chooses not to. Instead, he just says goodbye to her in that heartbreaking scene. Thawne then tries to escape, using the machine Barry built to open a wormhole. But Eddie Thawne, Eobard's ancestor, sacrifices himself, shoots himself in the chest, which erases Eobard from existence, or so we thought. That's where things start to get confusing, because in season 2, after Flash and his friends close the wormhole caused by Thawne's machine, Zoom shows up, and through that we eventually get to see the Time Wraiths. Those weird zombie-like speed monsters who punish speedsters that mess with the timeline. And that's how they explain why Thawne still exists even after being erased by Eddie's sacrifice. The timeline basically resets him, pulling an earlier version of Thawne from the past and dropping him back into play. And man, that's when Reverse Flash's timeline gets really messy. Because technically, every time Barry messes with time, Thawne's story gets rewritten too. Which is why we keep getting new versions of him. Sometimes younger, sometimes older, like in Legends of Tomorrow. But the show kind of uses this as a get out of jail free card to keep bringing Thawne back over and over. Which is awesome in the beginning, but later on it starts to hurt the character. Still, one of the best episodes that dives deep into this timeline stuff is season 2, episode 11, The Reverse Flash Returns. That's where Cisco vibes and sees Thawne again, and Barry realizes he's facing a younger version of Eobard, the one from before he killed Nora Allen. This Thawne hadn't gone through all those future events yet, so technically he didn't even hate Barry with the same intensity. He was still figuring things out. But after fighting Barry here, he discovers even more about his future. And the timeline secures his role as Flash's nemesis all over again. From there, we also see him popping up in Legends of Tomorrow Season 2. He joins up with Damian Dark and Malcolm Merlyn to form the Legion of Doom, all while trying to escape the Black Flash, the Grim Reaper of speedsters. This version of Thawne is one of the most interesting, because he's literally running for his life across time, knowing that the moment he stops, the Black Flash will catch him and erase him. Eventually, the Legends defeat him by trapping him. In a fixed point in time, the Black Flash catches him and boom, Eobard is gone once again. But of course, not for long. Because later in The Flash Season 5, we discover that in the year 2034, Thawne is still alive. He's locked up in a cell at Iron Heights, where he manipulates Nora West Allen, Barry and Iris's daughter, into working with him. That whole arc shows how even decades later, Thawne is still obsessed with Barry and his family. He tricks Nora, gets her to mess with the timeline, and almost destroys everything. But by the end of that season, Nora sacrifices herself, fading away in Barry's arms. And even though Thawne is scheduled to be executed in 2049, he somehow manages to escape again. And this is where season 7 and 8 really pile on the craziness, because now we've got multiple Reverse Flashes running around, different versions of him in different timelines. Sometimes it's the Wells face, sometimes it's Matt Letcher's original face. It gets to the point where you're not even sure which Thawne you're watching anymore. The writers clearly just wanted him back every season, but the explanations kept getting weaker. In season 7, for example, we see Thawne helping Barry fight against Godspeed. For a moment, it looks like he's working with Team Flash, but of course, it's all part of his own plan. As soon as Barry takes care of Godspeed, Thawne turns on him, tries to kill him, and once again gets defeated. It's that cycle. He shows up, causes chaos, loses, disappears, and then comes back again in another season. And then in season 8, we get the Armageddon crossover, which finally gives us a proper explanation for his rivalry with Barry. That episode confirms that Reverse Flash's hatred started because Barry stole his big heroic moment centuries in the future. That humiliation is what twisted Thawne into becoming Barry's greatest enemy. It was cool to finally see the Arrowverse make that explicit, but at the same time, it felt kind of underwhelming after years of mystery. Fans expected something bigger, darker, and instead it was basically jealousy. And to make things even more confusing, the show brings in another twist. Thawne becomes the negative Flash, merging with the negative Speed Force. He's resurrected, with even more power than ever before, and the show tries to frame him as the ultimate final villain for Barry. The problem is, by this point, the impact was already gone. We'd seen Thawne die, resurrect, vanish, and return so many times that it was hard to take it seriously anymore. By the series finale in season 9, Thawne once again appears as Reverse Flash, this time alongside other speedster villains. It's supposed to feel like the ultimate showdown, Barry versus all his greatest enemies at once. But honestly, it didn't land as strongly as it should have. Reverse Flash should have been saved as a true final villain, the big bad that closes the book on the entire series. Instead, he was used and reused so much over the years that when the finale came, it just didn't have that same weight. And that's really the tragedy of Reverse Flash in the Arrowverse. He started out as one of the best villains in TV superhero history. Mysterious, menacing, clever, always 10 steps ahead of Barry. Season 1 built him up perfectly, but after that, the writers leaned on him way too much. Every time the show needed a boost, they just throw Reverse Flash back in there. And while that gave us some awesome moments, it also watered down the character to the point where his big return wasn't exciting anymore. It was expected. Still, when we look back at the Arrowverse, there's no denying that Reverse Flash made the Flash what it was. Without him, the show wouldn't have had the same drama, the same emotional stakes, or the same epic rivalries. Eobard Thawne will always be remembered as Barry's greatest enemy, and even if the series kind of fumbled his ending, that first season alone cemented him as one of the best live-action villains we've ever seen. But what about you guys? Do you think the show ruined Reverse Flash, or do you still love every single return he had? And which version of Thawne was your favorite? The Wells face, the Matt Letcher version, or the negative Flash? I'll drop your thoughts in the comments, because I know this is one of those topics that every Arrowverse fan has an opinion on. And hey, if you enjoyed this breakdown of Reverse Flash's entire timeline, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe out to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next deep dive into the Arrowverse. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.